But my top rated book on confidence is called The Super You. I'm sending it to you, physical book, free. Go to the link down there. You got it.
DreAllDay.com.
If there's a better show out, it is yet to be discovered, because you are tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline of showing up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, the go-getter energy for you to make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. Putting all this together for the purpose of you producing. You get the mindset, the method, the podcast known as Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day. Welcome to the show. Today's topic is when is it suitable? When is the right time for you to completely take over a situation? Now, we understand in life, and I've talked about in many episodes of this show, that teamwork matters. I mean, you've heard the phrase teamwork makes the dream work. A team is a group of individuals who have all come together to reach a common goal. And sometimes when you're on a team and within an organization, you're in a group, there may be times where you need to take over, though. See, I got this whole idea of talking about this from sports. In basketball, sometimes the best player on the team who really wants to win, he may have to start dominating the action, right? Dominating the ball to make sure his team wins. I mean, a person who doesn't even know much about basketball can watch a basketball game and identify who the best player is, because often the best player is a player that's making more plays than anybody else. It's like the only player that you notice on the court, even though it may be 10 guys or 10 girls out there playing. Sometimes on a team, in sports, in business, in families, in anything, sometimes one person needs to step up and just start dominating the action just to ensure that the outcome is achieved. All right, and if they don't do that, then the outcome may not be achieved. And if the outcome is the most important thing, which it should be to any team, because the purpose of a team is to achieve a common goal, if that outcome seems to not be on the path to being achieved unless somebody steps up and takes over, or maybe it's just not on that path and a person says, you know what, the only way this could happen, maybe it'll still fail, is if I take over, I'm going to take over. Michael Jordan said in one of his books, I will die with no bullets in my holster. Now, if I'm going to die, I'm going to make sure I shoot all those bullets. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to strike out looking, as they say. If you're going to strike out, at least strike out trying to hit a home run. Don't strike out just looking at the pitch and let the umpire call you out on strike. So you got to go and kind of take over that situation. Not kind of, but definitely take over a situation sometimes in life. And as spectators, any of you who watch, let's say, a sport like basketball is the best example I can give, because any player can pretty much do anything, any action on the court, perform any function. We love seeing it. Like, we love to see when one player just starts dominating. If you watch a guy like LeBron James, when he was playing for the Cleveland Cavaliers, there would be times where he would just dominate the action. He would be taking all the shots. He'd be making all the plays on defense, make the plays on offense, and it was fun to watch. Even if you're not a LeBron fan, you're like, damn, this guy's pretty damn good. He's just dominating the action. Michael Jordan would do it. Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Kobe Bryant, Russell Westbrook even. Many players have done this, and when it happens, we all enjoy watching it because we're like, this guy's about to put on a show. He's about to dominate, and he's not doing it just to put on the show. Maybe that's part of it, but the real reason is this guy's like, okay, if we're going to win, if we're going to win this game, we're going to win this series, we're going to win this championship, I better start dominating. Or if we're going to lose, we're going to lose with me dominating, not with me playing passively and just letting whatever happens. And in the other areas of life, this exact same thing can happen. In today's episode, I'm going to tell you when it is suitable for you, not someone else, but you, to completely take over a situation and start dominating the action, and let everybody else who's on your team or in your group, let them fall back while you do what you got to do to make sure this game gets won or this outcome gets achieved. There was a commercial. I don't know if any of you would remember this commercial, but there was a commercial, maybe about 2002 maybe, where it was a Nike commercial, I believe, and there were a bunch of guys playing pickup basketball. And the two main characters in this commercial, they were playing on opposing teams. And I'll tell you who they were in a minute. Now, one guy, there was a no-name guy. He wasn't a famous guy. He shot the ball, and he missed the shot. And the camera quickly cut over to this basketball player by the name of Paul Pierce. He was playing for the Boston Celtics at the time. Paul Pierce just had a scowl on his face, like, man, this guy just missed the shot that he should have made. Then they showed another clip of another no-name guy. He would turn the ball over. He was trying to make a play, but he turned the ball over. And then the video cut to the guy on the opposite team, the brand name guy on the opposite team. His name was Jermaine O'Neal. And at the time, Jermaine O'Neal was playing for the Indiana Pacers. These guys were both all-stars in the NBA at the time. So both of these guys were getting kind of pissed off because apparently, and the the commercial masterfully explained this without explaining it in about 10 seconds, that both of these guys were upset that their lesser teammates weren't making plays as well as they should have been making. So basically what happened over the next maybe 5 to 10 seconds of the commercial is Paul Pierce just took the ball and he started scoring points himself. And then Jermaine O'Neal took the ball, he started scoring points himself. Then the camera cut to showing the other guys, the no-name guys, their teammates. Those guys just stopped playing in the game. They just went and sat down on the sideline because they're like, okay, I'm not going to be involved in this game anymore because it's obvious my superstar teammate's going to take over in a positive way. And guys on both teams just went and sat down. Eventually, it went from a 5-on-5 game to Paul Pierce and Jermaine O'Neal just playing one-on-one, going back and forth, scoring all kinds of points on each other. And the whole premise of the commercial was showing, first of all, how great these guys were. And secondly, they were both taking over the situation because both of them said, okay, these guys are not able to do what I need them to do. So listen, I don't have time to teach them. I don't have time to let them grow and play through their mistakes or none of that. I'm just going to take over the situation right now. And that commercial, it was a short-lived commercial. I don't think any of you would even remember that. But if you do, you can tweet me at Dre all day and tell me you remember that commercial. You can look it up on YouTube. It's probably up there somewhere. Let's get into our topic here. Our points of when it is suitable, when it is required, when it is mandatory for you to take over a situation. Number one, when you know exactly what you want, that may be time for you to take over. When you know exactly what it is you want. Now, this doesn't mean do it all by yourself. It means that you take the lead. No matter how many people you're working with one person or you're working with 1,000 people, it means you take the lead and you direct everyone else to make sure your vision comes to life, whatever your vision happens to be, because you know exactly what it is, right? When you know exactly what your vision is, that's when you can tell everybody else, no, that's not right. You need to do it this way. You can be this taskmaster that's paying so much attention to detail. If you read a story about someone like Steve Jobs, he was so clear on his vision and exactly what he wanted that he was able to micromanage even these super talented engineers and designers who made the products that we use every single day, because he knew exactly what he wanted. He took over situations. Even though he wasn't doing all the work, he wasn't the one in the factory making things by hand every single day, but he was overseeing it. He dominated the project and he infused every single product that came out of that company when he was running it, Steve Jobs, with his stamp, with his vision, his spirit, because he knew exactly what he wanted. If you don't know exactly what you want, you can't take over a situation because you don't even know what you're going to do. But when you know what you want, it may be time for you to take over the situation. Take the lead, tell everyone else what to do to direct them to completing your vision. I'll read stories about a guy like Puff Daddy. He's another guy who, when I read stories about him from people who worked with him during the heyday of his Bad Boy record company, they would say the same thing. Like, this guy was teaching us attention to detail. He was teaching us perfectionism. This guy was always on top of everything. He would make me do the same verse over and over again. He'd make us work on the same song and do the same line over and over again until we got it right. He was micromanaging. There was another story. I was listening to a story by, who was it? It was a guy by the name of Top Dog. And if you listen to rap, you know Top Dog is the head of a company called, I forgot the name of the company, but Kendrick Lamar's label. Now, Kendrick Lamar was an artist who was up and coming, and he heard Top Dog was managing Kendrick, and he heard that Dr. Dre was interested in working with Kendrick. So Dr. Dre invited them to the studio, and Top Dog and Kendrick go to the studio. And this is what happened when they went to the studio, is that Dr. Dre had Snoop Dogg in the booth. The booth was basically being on the microphone rapping to a song. And Snoop Dogg is a legendary rapper, right? This guy's been around for over 20 years. And while he's doing that, Dr. Dre was still being a perfectionist, working with a legend, a guy who has 20 plus years in the game, is Snoop Dogg. He was punching in, is what they call it. Punching in is kind of like, well, it's not kind of like, but what it is when you record a verse and there's one word that you might not have said the right way, at least according to the producer, or your intonation or your tonality or just something about it, the inflection of it just wasn't right. So the producer will have you do that one word or that one phrase or that one part of the verse over again, and then they'll punch it in, so to speak, into the verse and make it all sound like it flows into one thing. So you think someone like Jay-Z, he brags about how he does his in one take. A producer like Dr. Dre, he was punching in with a guy like Snoop Dogg. And this guy, Top Dog, who's managing Kendrick Lamar, said, when I saw Dr. Dre doing that with Snoop, who's a legend, I said, I want to have Kendrick work with this guy, because this guy's a perfectionist. He's on top of everything. He's going to make sure it's done absolutely right. He doesn't care how long it's going to take. He doesn't care who he's working with. He doesn't care if they don't like that they got to keep doing it over and over again. This guy's a perfectionist. He's going to help this guy put out the perfect album. And that perfect album became Good Kid, Mad City, Kendrick Lamar's at least major label debut album. So this first point is when you know exactly what you want. And when you have a clear vision of what it's supposed to look like, sound like, feel like, what the outcome's supposed to be, it may be time for you to do this. Now, the idea of micromanaging makes you uneasy. Maybe you're thinking to yourself, well, yeah, it sounds good for Puff Daddy or Dr. Dre or Steve Jobs Dre, but what about me? You know, it makes me kind of uneasy to think about taking over a situation that way. Well, listen, maybe you're not ready to take over yet. Or maybe the situation at hand doesn't fit the bill for your takeover. Because there's some areas where it would make sense for you to take over. There are other areas where maybe it wouldn't make sense for you to take over. So whatever specific area where it makes you feel uncomfortable, maybe it's not time for you to step up and do that just yet. But there may be an area where there is. Now, all of this is assuming that you have the skill. And in this first point, you got to know exactly what you want. If you don't know exactly what you want, then you're not going to be able to do it, at least with point number one. Point number two. Today's topic is when to completely take over a situation. You completely take over when you gauge that your takeover is the only reasonable path to completion of the mission. You don't see any other way that this mission is going to be successful unless you take over the situation. Russell Westbrook, basketball player for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they played the Utah Jazz in the NBA playoffs this past spring. The last game of that series ended up being Game 6, played in Utah, I believe. Game 6 or Game 5 or 6, one of those. Played in Utah. Russell Westbrook shot the ball 43 times, which is a lot of shots to take in a basketball game. 43 shots is a lot. The person who shoots the most shots per game in an NBA season usually shoots somewhere between 20 and 25 shots per game over 82-game season. Russell shot twice that, 43 shots in the last game. Now, he didn't make a whole lot of those shots, and their team ended up losing. They got eliminated from the playoffs, and some people criticized Russ for that. Some people said, well, he had to because nobody else was having a great game. Either way, it doesn't matter. The reason I'm bringing that up is to tell you that Russell Westbrook was thinking exactly what I'm just saying here. He gauged that the only way they could possibly win is if he took over and dominated that situation. Maybe he was right, maybe he was wrong. They ended up losing. That doesn't mean that had he not taken that, it does not mean, I'm going to be clear, that had he taken 25 shots instead of 43, that they would have won. Maybe they would have lost anyway. Russell Westbrook's mindset was, if we're going to lose, I'm going to shoot the ball. If we're going to lose, we're going to lose with me dominating this situation. If you watch ball, you've seen Kobe Bryant do the exact same thing, just shoot and shoot and shoot. In Game 7 of the 2010 NBA Finals, the Lakers were playing the Boston Celtics at home in LA. Kobe Bryant shot the ball 24 times in that Game 7. You know how many shots he made in that game? 6. 6 for 24 in Game 7 of the NBA Finals. Now, luckily, some of his teammates made some shots too, and the Lakers ended up winning that championship anyway. But Kobe Bryant's mentality was, if we're going to lose the championship, we're going to lose with me shooting the ball. I heard Kobe Bryant once say that if I go 0 for 10 in a game, that's a failing game. Not because I went 0 for 10, but because I didn't go 0 for 30. Let me say that one more time for you athletes, for you non-athletes, just to understand the mentality behind what he said. He said, if I go 0 for 10 in a game, doesn't mean he said that is a failing game, but it's not a failing game because I went 0 for 10. It's a failing game because I didn't go 0 for 30. Meaning he didn't keep trying. Kobe said when a player goes 0 for 10 in the game, that means they got spooked. Basically, they got shook out of shooting the ball anymore because they kept missing. Because they were missing, they stopped trying. It's better to go 0 for 30 because at least you know you tried. Like, I'm gonna keep shooting. One of these shots eventually has it going. But if you go 0 for 10, that means you shot some, you were missing, then you say, you know what, how about I just never try that again so it doesn't work out. And a lot of people spend their entire lives going 0 for 10. Think about that one right there. A lot of people go 0 for 10 in their entire lives, meaning they try a few things, it doesn't work, and then they spend the rest of the game not trying anymore. You marinate on that one for a moment. Michael Jordan, same thing. He had many games where he just shot and shot and shot. Sometimes the Bulls will win, sometimes the Bulls will lose. Many times they ended up winning, and Michael Jordan, as I told you, he said he will die with no bullets in his holster. It doesn't always mean just because you take over that it will work and you will win, but you'll be damned if you don't try. That's the mindset of the person who takes over. Number 3, today's topic is when it is suitable. When does it make sense to completely take over a situation? When an example needs to be set. This is the third reason. If you need to set an example for everybody else in that room, everybody else on the team, your opponents, the fans, whoever it happens to be, maybe you need to set an example for yourself. That's when it's time to take over. Kobe Bryant, 1 year the Lakers were not doing too well, or at least according to Los Angeles Lakers standards, and they're a legendary franchise in all of sports, let alone basketball. They weren't doing too well so far into the season, and the reporters were talking to Kobe either after a game or after practice. You know how they had the little media scrum in the locker room. And Kobe Bryant said, "We will get it together, and if we don't get it together, I'll kick everybody's ass who's in this locker room." Now, he was saying it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, but not really. It was like a 40% tongue-in-cheek and 60% serious, that I'll kick everybody's ass in his locker room. What he was saying was, things are going to happen the way that I want them to happen, or everybody's going to pay the price, and I'm the one who's going to exact that price. Now, I want you to read between the lines of what he's saying there also. Something that is a requirement that I didn't say, but I'm going to say it now, is that you got to have an established leadership position if you're going to be this person who takes over. See, if you're not established as a leader, if you're not established as a person who everybody will, when you say I'm taking over, and you don't have to actually verbally say it, but your actions say I'm taking over, everybody's going to stand down and actually let you take over. If you're not an established leader, it's not going to happen. They're not going to move out of the way when you decide to take over. But when you're an established leader and you say, we're going to figure this out and I'm going to kick everybody's ass in here and nobody says anything back to you, that's when you're an established leader. Now, Kobe said that. Everybody heard it. Everybody knew about it. Everybody read it in the paper or on Twitter the next day. Nobody questioned it. Nobody approached Kobe about it. Why? Because Kobe was the guy. He was the guy, and he already had a reputation for taking over when he wanted to take over. Now, taking over doesn't have anything to do with what you say. It's about what you do. Now, when you do things and establish that leadership position and establish that you have the ability to take over and produce a result, then you can say things. No, Kobe Bryant didn't say this his rookie year in the NBA. He said this when he was 15, 16, 18 years into the NBA. He had already established a reputation of, I'm a guy who can and will take over and do so successfully. Then he could say whatever he wanted to say. When you need to set an example for your team, that's when it's time to take over. Okay, everybody get the hell out of the way. Like Paul Pierce, Jermaine O'Neal in that commercial that I mentioned at the top of this episode. All right, y'all not doing anything. I'm going to just take over this situation. Tim Grover said in his book, Relentless, he was writing about Michael Jordan, that Michael would play every game kind of gauging where his teammates were at each game. Some games, some teammates didn't show up. All Michael's mentality was, at least according to Tim Grover, was all I need the rest of you guys to do is get us into the fourth quarter, and then I'll take over the game at that point. And if you watch Jordan play, that's pretty much how he played. I mean, it's not like he didn't play the first three quarters, but the fourth quarter was his time. When it got to crunch time, that's when he started taking over the game. And I'm using basketball as an example here because basketball is one sport outside of baseball and football, even hockey, that any player can pretty much perform any function. In all those other sports, players are limited in their functions. So basketball is the best place to use. Basketball is the best analogy that I can use, at least based on sports. So that is the third time when you need to set an example of when to take over a situation, move everybody else out of the way. Y'all get the hell out of my way, whether you need to say it or you don't need to say it. Most of the time you won't. Your energy and your actions will say it for you. And people will get out of your way. And all your job is from that point is make sure you deliver the result. Because once you do that, now you got a reputation. Now you got the leadership. Now people will move out of your way instinctively. And also, the other side of this, now you're expected to deliver consistently. So you better be sure that you're ready to take on that burden once you take it on. Let's recap today's topic, which is when to completely take over a situation. Point number one, when you know exactly what you want. This doesn't mean do it all yourself. It means you take the lead and direct everyone else to make your vision come to life. Number two, when you gaze that your takeover is the only reasonable path to completion of the mission. If you don't see any other way of succeeding besides you dominating the action, then you go dominate the action. You don't have to be right or wrong. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. If that's the way you see it, then you go do it because you're the leader and you make the final decisions. And number three, when an example needs to be set, when you need to show everybody else, listen, I can do this, I will do this, we will win regardless of what I got to do, that's when you take over a situation. If you're ready to do that, if you have the skills, if you've established yourself as a leader, these are the ways that you know it's time for you to take over, dominate, and again, make sure you deliver. Work on your game. DreAllDay.com.